miracles possible? Many say yes. I say yes, but many also say no. And we should look at the philosophy behind this question. The first thing I think is to define the word miracle. I would define a miracle as a divinely caused suspension of the laws of physics, a suspension of the laws of physics that is divine in origin. Now, I believe in the possibility of miracles. I also believe in the historicity of some very important ones. I believe they actually happened. The resurrection of Jesus the Messiah in particular, but also some others. My approach to the question of whether the laws of physics are ever suspended is empirical, meaning that I think we should look for an answer to this question from experience. Now, I think experience can tell us what the laws of physics actually are, and I think it's best that we don't presume that the laws of physics are absolute. Rather, we should let experience tell us whether the laws of physics are ever suspended. That's more or less my view in a nutshell, but we have to consider some objections and maybe sort out a few things about empiricism. The first objection we need to look at comes up these days, I think, almost by instinct, but largely under the influence of a philosopher named David Hume. Now, this first objection I don't think is actually what Hume says, but it's in the vicinity, and we'll get back to Hume after this objection. So, first objection goes something like this. We posit the laws of physics, which means that we state what are the laws of physics. We posit the laws of physics based on what we have experienced. So, if our experiences include a certain type of event, we cannot posit laws of physics that exclude it. So it's impossible to have any experience of miracles. In other words, this objection says, when we say what are the laws of physics, we say them based on our experiences, and any supposed experience of a miraculous event would already be included in our experiences, and so it would be included already in the laws of physics. Now, how shall we respond to this objection? Well, the laws of physics are not the sum total of our experiences. Even our descriptions of the laws of physics are not the sum total of our experiences. The laws of physics are the rules governing the physical world, which we happen to know through our experiences. If we have enough experience, and if we can correctly do some probabilistic inductive reasoning from that experience, then we can know what those laws of physics are. If we have some extra experiences of something else, that doesn't change what we already know. Think of it this way. Suppose no one ever claimed to have any experience of a miracle, and we had learned from all our experiences about the laws of inertia. That means that the experience from which we learned about the laws of inertia was enough to give us knowledge of inertia. If then something changes the next day and we add to the sum total of human experience some new experience of a miracle, the sum total minus that new bit is still there, and it's still enough for us to know the laws of inertia. It was enough yesterday, it's still enough today. Like Hume himself said, we can posit, by induction from our experiences, a law of physics which governs the physical world, but whether such a law is on rare occasions overruled by some influence outside the physical world is a separate question, a question not affecting in any way our ability to posit what are those laws. I think the sensible thing to do, or at least the empirical thing to do, is to allow experience to inform us, one, what are the laws of physics, and two, are they occasionally overruled? Note well, the laws of physics are not generalizations about all possible events. They are the rules governing physical reality. So when we know a law of physics, we are not knowing that this is the way things always happen. What we're knowing is that this is how the physical world works, at least when it's left to itself. Whether it always is left to itself is a separate question. And I think it is a question better answered by experience than by some other means. Now, shouldn't the evidence for a miracle still be really, really high? Yes. And does that mean it needs to be so high that it's virtually impossible for any miracle to have enough evidence? Now, that's an important question, and it takes us closer to what Hume really said about miracles. Let's look at his actual objection, at least according to my understanding of it. Hume's actual objection is more like this. It is more likely that the testimony for an alleged miracle is in error than that the miracle actually took place. In order for me to rationally accept the testimony for a miracle, the probability that that testimony is reliable should be even greater than the probability for the laws of physics which that miracle is said to have suspended. In other words, there are two probabilities to consider here: the probability that the evidence for a miracle is reliable, and the probability of the laws of physics. And the probability that the evidence for the probability that the evidence for a miracle is reliable is going to be lower than the probability of the laws of physics in every case. And therefore, you should never believe in miracles. Now, how do we respond to this objection? Well, I would say in response to Hume, thanks for the advice, but that's actually not good empiricism. If you make this objection, it seems to me you're assigning to a suspension of the laws of physics a probability which is determined by, and only by, the laws of physics themselves. So you're ruling out the possibility that any other factor might affect the likelihood of a miracle occurring. You're ruling out the possibility of miracles in advance. You're presuming that the laws of physics are absolute. You're presuming the falsity of the view being discussed, which is the logical fallacy of arguing in a circle. What they used to say was begging the question, although that phrase has been misused so much that maybe it's best we abandon it. This is the fallacy of arguing in a circle. We are assuming there are no miracles because we're assuming that the laws of physics are absolute, and for that reason, and apparently for only that reason, this objection, when we make this objection, it's for the reason that we're assuming that the laws of physics are absolute, and apparently only for that reason that we say that the probability of a miracle occurring depends only on the laws of physics themselves. That was a mouthful. Let me see if I can summarize that a little more briefly and succinctly. Okay. I think Hume's objection here is assuming in advance that the probability of reliable evidence for a miracle depends on the laws of physics themselves. But if that's what it depends on, then the laws of physics are absolute, which means Hume is assuming in advance that there are no miracles, which is arguing in a circle. A better empiricism would allow experience to inform us both of the laws of physics and of whether they are broken. But does the evidence for a miracle still have to be very good? Of course, yes, of course. And if we experience what looks like a miracle, should we carefully check to make sure that it happened that way, and also that it's not just we misunderstood the laws of physics? Yes, of course the evidence should be good, and we should check for both of those things. The point here is something different. The point is that it doesn't have to be better evidence than the evidence for the laws of physics themselves. To consider only the probability of the laws of physics when we're weighing the probability against a particular miracle is to presume that the laws of physics are absolute, which is, again, presuming against miracles, which is rejecting prior to experience any miracles rather than letting experience tell us whether they occur. Let's consider a totally different kind of objection against miracles. We could argue this way. We could say the laws of physics are inviolable or never violated. A miracle would violate the laws of physics, and so miracles are impossible. Now, this argument has premises that do a great job supporting their conclusion, but let's look at that first premise. The laws of physics are never violated. They're inviolable. They can't be broken. You could accept that premise for non-empirical reasons. But in this case, what you're doing is not empiricism. You're thinking about the way the world works in advance of any experience, independently of any experience. It's rationalistic metaphysics, to use philosophical terminology, which is just to say, you're doing philosophy, but you're not doing it empirically. Now, I think materialism, the theory that says all is matter, is an incorrect theory in metaphysics. I think the prospects for materialism are pretty dismal. I think there's some good evidence against materialism. But the important point here is only that this argument is not an empirical one if we're accepting that premise for non-empirical reasons. The empirical approach would be to let experience tell us whether the laws of physics are inviolable. Now, what about premise one, and could we accept it for empirical reasons? Yes, actually, there's a different way of approaching this. We could accept that premise for empirical reasons. We could say a miracle would suspend the laws of physics, but the laws of physics are never suspended. And we could say that the laws of physics are never expended based on experience, but we'd have to make that argument properly. Here's how we could do it. We could argue thus. We could say, 1, we have no experience of events which suspend the laws of physics. 2, we have a lot of experience of events which do not suspend the laws of physics, and therefore the laws of physics are never suspended. Now, these premises do a terrific job supporting their conclusion. And at the risk of oversimplifying things, I would say that this argument actually has to work if science ever works, and science does work. So this is a fine argument. For example, we have no experience of physical objects not subject to gravity. We have a great deal of experience of physical objects which are subject to gravity. Therefore, all physical objects are subject to gravity. Works for me. I dig. I like that argument. I think the premises support the conclusion well. The problem with this argument is its first premise. You can't use that kind of argument to argue against any empirical evidence of miracles. That would, again, be circular reasoning. It would be a fallacy, and here's what it would look like if you put together the whole thing. We have no experience of events which violate the laws of physics. We have a great deal of experience of events which do not violate the laws of physics. Therefore, the laws of physics are never violated, or maybe I should be saying suspended. We have no experience of events which suspend the laws of physics. We have a great deal of experience of events which do not suspend them. Therefore, the laws of physics are never suspended. Miracles violate or suspend the laws of physics, so miracles are impossible. So the evidence that a miracle took place at such and such a time is illegitimate, so we did not experience a miracle at such and such a time and place. But notice that conclusion that we did not experience a miracle is already in the premise. We have no experience of events which suspend the laws of physics. I think that's a textbook example of circular reasoning. So let's go back to that earlier argument. We have no experience of events which suspend the laws of physics. We have a great deal of experience of events which do not. Therefore, the laws of physics are never suspended. I think that's a very good argument. The premises support the conclusion. It's a good empirical argument. I like that. And this argument has a good attitude. It says we can let experience tell us whether the laws of physics are never suspended. And I say if the premises of that argument are true, go for it. But I also say, if the premise of that argument that says we have no experience of events which suspend the laws of physics, if that premise is false, then don't accept that argument. If there is good evidence for a miracle, accept it. That's what I say. Thanks for watching.